How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne and this is my channel PSReady that's all about PlayStation. Today's video is all about the Xbox Business Development podcast that was just put out. I'm going to cover it very briefly at the beginning of the video, and then the bulk of the video is going to be talking about it from the PlayStation perspective, because obviously that's what really matters, the PlayStation perspective on all of this. I just got to say, after waiting all day, well, over a week for this podcast to happen, they should have put this out over a week ago, because what they said is kind of just exactly what I think people wanted to hear, but they didn't announce any new games or new hardware or anything like that, so I don't really see why they had to wait so long to release it. But with that being said, let's get through the big bullet points of the thing and talk about the PlayStation perspective on it. So the rumors were true. A few games are coming to PlayStation from the Xbox side of the fence, and there's actually going to be 4 of them. Weirdly, they didn't announce the 4 games. I think that was the worst move, and honestly the most criticizable move in this entire thing. Like, we know what the games are. It's very obvious. I just don't understand why they didn't announce them, but they said it's going to be 2 live service games and 2 smaller games. The 2 live service games are definitely Sea of Thieves and Grounded. I think that's just a smart move all around to have those on different platforms. Sea of Thieves has totally plateaued in terms of new players coming to it. They have a good community over there on Xbox of people who regularly play it, but with a game like that, where the monetization strategy is built on like battle passes and, you know, microtransactions and everything like that, it's just objectively a good move to inject it with more players. I wonder what they're going to price it at, like if they're going to go to a free-to-play model and just add more microtransaction stuff and more battle passes, or if they're going to charge like a full $60 for this game over on PlayStation. If that's the case, I don't see a lot of people showing up for it. Despite the fact it has a huge community and everything like that, it's really hard to get momentum on a game like that that's been out for so long on the other platform, and especially with the amazing live service game we have right now, Helldivers 2, going on PlayStation. I just don't see it making a big wave if it comes over to our platform. The other game being Grounded, this is another smart move. If you don't know, Grounded is like a survival game that's set in a backyard. It's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids if it was turned into a mini open world survival game. It's really good. I played a lot of it over on PC. It has a defined story with the start and finish. It does really well over on Xbox, and for a team that made it only being 13 people over at Obsidian, I think it's a pretty big achievement. Now, this one is a cheaper game too. I think it retails for 30 or 40 bucks. So if this one just shadow drops on the PlayStation Store pretty soon, I could see this one maybe getting a few players and doing well for Xbox. The 2 smaller games from all the leaks and rumors we've heard from The Verge are Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment. I think Hi-Fi Rush has a pretty decent shot of making at least a little bit of a splash over on PlayStation, because Tango Gameworks, they're a Japanese studio. The art style and the gameplay kind of do fit well with that PlayStation ecosystem, and just like with Grounded, it's a cheaper game, so it's not like you're gonna have to pay a full $60 or $70 to get in on this experience. Pentiment, on the other hand, I just think there's such a limited audience for that game that, like, yeah, it might sell a few copies over on PlayStation, but like, I don't think it's gonna be a massive hit or anything like that, because even with last year's, like one of last year's biggest games, Baldur's Gate 3, that game came to PlayStation, and I don't think we've even seen numbers from how it sold, but I'm assuming that it didn't sell very well on console, because that is a PC-ass PC game. So you can kind of see why it might not perform as well on PlayStation as something like a desktop computer, you know? So yeah, they didn't announce the games. Those are the 4 games that are probably coming over. This is a weird group of games in my opinion, because if it was me, obviously I don't know anything. I'm not like a console manufacturer or anything like that. The games I would personally put over on PlayStation would be stuff like Halo the Master Chief Collection, or make a Gears of War collection that I could just shadow drop over there, because that would give people more of an incentive to go out and buy an Xbox if they said, hey, you can catch up on the Halo franchise and the Gears franchise right now on PlayStation, but if you want to play the newest games like Halo Infinite, Gears 4 and 5, the eventual Gears 6, you're going to have to buy an Xbox, because those are never going to come over to PlayStation. That, it was just a smart business move, and from a marketing standpoint, I think would work out really well. Of course, there's nothing to say that they couldn't do this in the future, but like, it's weird that they're just picking 4 random games out of their big library of stuff that they have over on Xbox to port over, and the 4 games that they've chosen, the one that I think has the most chance to succeed would definitely be Grounded or Hi-Fi Rush. I just don't see people turning up for Sea of Thieves this late in its life cycle. As far as Indiana Jones and Starfield go, this one is still wishy-washy for me because Phil Spencer in the podcast kind of made it very clear that those were not two of the games that they're launching first out of the four. But then there was a follow-up interview with Tom Warren over at The Verge where he was nowhere near as committal about that. He was like, I don't want to make a blanket statement and say that none of these games will ever come to other platforms, but as of right now, they'll remain exclusive. So as far as I'm concerned, everything is up in the air when it comes to Bethesda with games like Starfield and of course Indiana Jones, and that goes for games like Doom Year Zero and other stuff they have coming down the pipe that we haven't even heard about yet. So I would assume that if and when those games do come to PlayStation, it'll be at least a year after they release, and honestly I could see those doing pretty well because by that point Starfield will have all of its content, all of its updates, all of its DLC, probably modders and their whole creation club thing going. I've tried to play that game 1,000 times. You guys know I'm like the biggest Bethesda fan of all time, and there's just something about it that doesn't click with me. I think it's the lack of exploration. Like my favorite thing to do in Fallout 4, 76, and Skyrim is just fill out the map, like get all of those, outline markers filled in, explore, level up my character. And because of the way Starfield's set up, you can't really do that. So even with all of those patches and DLC, I'm not even sure how well that would perform over on PlayStation 5, but it would of course provide a big revenue bump for that game, which I think they kind of need. Like this game lost 97% of its players already on Steam, which is obviously not great. They also kept hammering that they want Xbox on every screen. They kept talking about cloud. You guys know I do not care about cloud at all. It is never going to be my preferred way to play games, and I will always fight to have some option where I can just either buy a disc or download a game, because owning my stuff and having it on my console, like digitally owning it even, is like fair enough in my opinion at least. That's the best way to go. There was a question from the interviewer Tina Meany, who I've met in real life. She's awesome. She asked about game preservation, and they gave this non-committal answer like, yeah, we have back compat over on Xbox, which to be fair is great. The fact that you can put your Xbox discs in your Series X and then they'll run is awesome. Same goes for Xbox 360 and Xbox One. I think that's great. They said they look to Windows, where even on Windows you can play super old games, which is fair. The biggest difference there, of course, is that the Xbox operating system is much more closed than what we have on Windows. Like on Windows, if I wanted to play a lost game like Wolfenstein 2009, all I have to do is go to the Internet Archive and the exe is sitting right there. I download it and I run it on my computer and it's totally free. Whereas on Xbox, if the licensing agreement runs out or the game isn't on the Xbox store like Wolfenstein 2009, then there's literally no sense of game preservation. Like it's just gone. So yeah, the best place for game preservation will continue to be either owning a PS1, a PS2, a PS3, a PS4, and a PS5, or owning a PC where you can just emulate these games and play them there. So like, I wouldn't have even included that question, honestly, because their answer was so just base level, wishy-washy, non-committal, the classic stuff that we've heard from every console manufacturer. Like I'm not even going to just dump on Xbox for that one. Like game preservation on consoles is just not great unless you have the disc or you have the game digitally. And then the hardware section is where I think things got really interesting. They did confirm that they're going to announce a next-gen Xbox this year. Sarah Bond specifically said they'll announce it this holiday, and it's going to be the biggest leap ever from one console to another. That's something where I'll believe it when I see it. We've seen the jump from PS4 to PS5. It is very small. Even the jump from PS3 to PS4 wasn't as big of a leap from like PS2 to PS3 or even PS1 to PS2. So again, I'll believe it when I see it. They also kind of hinted at a handheld though, and that's where I'm very interested in what Microsoft is going to do. Is it going to run the Xbox interface? Is it going to run this controller capable Windows interface that they've been working on for a little while now, that they want to get working on things like the ROG Ally and the Legion Go? There's a lot up in the air there, but like knowing that they're working on a handheld is very interesting. There's obviously a lot of interest there from people with stuff like the Nintendo Switch, the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, and of course the PlayStation Portal. So while in the PS4 generation, handheld gaming kind of died off, it seems like it's coming back and it's going to be bigger than ever. And the big reason for that is things have definitely shifted. Phil Spencer talked about this, where before they would make hardware to sell games and you would get the hardware to play the specific games, but now they make games to sell hardware. They want to invest in platforms platforms like Palworld or Minecraft or Roblox or, you know, Fortnite, where they're building games into Fortnite and stuff like that. So they want to make sure that they have devices where you can play those games logged into your Xbox account. I think that's really smart, really forward facing. I definitely think Sony's going to do that in the future as well. That kind of wraps up the whole Xbox podcast though. It was only 20 minutes, so it wasn't hard to summarize. So now let's move into the section of how this affects PlayStation. As far as hardware goes, you literally could not have a better option than owning a PlayStation 5 right now. You're going to get every third-party game, and even some third-party games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth are going to be exclusive to that console, and you're even going to get at least 4 Xbox games now on your PlayStation platform. So Xbox will make money off of those games. Like when you buy them, Sony's going to take a 30% cut, of course, but Xbox will get some revenue, which is good for them. But at the end of the day, the best place to play pretty much every game is going to continue to be either the PlayStation 5 or the upcoming PlayStation 5 Pro. So that's great. Sticking with hardware, hearing that Xbox is making a handheld, knowing that Nintendo is sticking with a handheld for the Switch 2, seeing how well the Steam Deck and the PlayStation Portal have been doing, I am just fully on the train now that Sony is definitely going to make a PlayStation handheld. You know, I'm super biased because the way I got into the industry was writing heavily about the PlayStation Vita. I was a huge Vita fan before they started releasing a ton of just random JRPGs and like just small games all the time on the PlayStation Store. I had at one time pretty much the entire PlayStation Vita library on those awesome little cartridges. I loved getting those little PlayStation cases back at GameStop when I was in college. So just the idea of Sony making a device where the philosophy is no longer going to be having separate games that are made for that handheld, but giving it the ability to play all the way up to at least PlayStation 6, that's just music to my ears, because like Phil Spencer keeps talking about, my biggest library is definitely on PlayStation. I have the most discs on PlayStation. I have the most stuff in my digital library, whether it's games I got from PlayStation Plus or games I bought on disc or digitally. My library is absolutely massive there. I love trophies. I love the achievement system on PlayStation. I even love the way that you can interact with friends on PlayStation. So giving me more ways to interact with that by giving me a handheld that I can use when my wife is watching The Bachelor or whatever garbage TV show she's watching at any given time, I can just play my PlayStation games on the couch and continue to have my progress transfer over with cross save. That's just exactly where I think PlayStation needs to go. And I also think they're being incredibly smart with their hardware strategy. We know Xbox is putting out a next-gen console at the very least in 2025 or 2026. That's going to be a pretty big jump over the Xbox Series X. It'll definitely be more powerful than what we're going to get from the PS5 Pro. But because the vast majority of gamers are playing on PlayStation, that is going to be the hardware target. Whatever PlayStation ends up putting out with the PS5 Pro, that is going to be the hardware and performance target for pretty much the vast majority of developers out there. So even though Xbox might have a little bit of a performance overhead boost like they do currently with the Xbox Series X, we're probably not going to see games running all that much better, right? Like we might see a more locked 60 FPS instead of like loading stutters or small frame drops into the high 50s or something like that. But as we've seen with the PlayStation 5, that doesn't really seem to affect people and their purchasing decisions when it comes to whether they're going to get a game on PS5 or Xbox. Where I think it will make a difference is for people, that small group out there who own a PS5 and a PC. I'll continue to just play on the PS5 and eventual PS5 Pro again, because I want those saves, I want the trophies, I want all of that PlayStation ecosystem goodness that you currently can't get on PC. But knowing that PlayStation, looking towards the future, is going to open up the PlayStation Network a little bit more and give people the ability to maybe transfer their saves or log into their PlayStation Network account and have their trophies transfer, like we're going to eventually have with Helldivers 2 whenever they update it to allow us to have cross save, so I can finally get back to playing it on PlayStation 5 because I'm level 17 on PC and I don't want to lose that progress. Knowing that that is what they're working towards, I think that will just be good overall for the PlayStation ecosystem. Like anything Xbox does outside of making exclusive games that will never come to PlayStation definitely just helps the PlayStation ecosystem from top to bottom, which is great. And knowing that Microsoft's strategy here is to just put out 4 games and see how they do, that kind of reminds me of PlayStation's strategy when it came to PlayStation Plus Extra. We've seen old games come to the service, right? Like stuff like Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut, The Last of Us Part 1 remastered, not the PS5 version of it, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Returnal, you know, these games that had sold through what they're going to sell through. That made a lot of sense. I saw no problems there. But I personally was very surprised when I saw them put Horizon Forbidden West so quickly onto the PS Plus Extra service, and they definitely learned that that was the wrong move, because as we've talked talked about multiple times here on the channel. The sales just absolutely cratered for that game once they did that. So I don't think we're going to be seeing that in the future because they need to make money on these games to continue the high bar of quality that we've been seeing. But still, I think they're going to lower the budgets and try to get games out faster, which is great. And when it comes to PlayStation going multi-platform, I'm just going to come out and say it. They will never release games on Xbox. I saw people yesterday when all this news came out, or when you're watching this video a few days ago, where they're going to start doing day and date on PC eventually and things like that, saying it's only a matter of time before we start seeing games from PlayStation on Xbox. There is literally zero incentive to do that. Xbox hardware is being outsold by PlayStation at a level of 2 to 1, so sinking money into porting games to a console where you're only going to capture at most 50% of the user base that you have on PlayStation, there is no incentive there at all. Porting them over to PC, I think, is a double-edged sword in a good way, where both edges are good, because as I've said on the channel, a lot of PC players will just never buy a PlayStation. They've had a full generation of first-party PlayStation games that were incredible, like Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man 2018, Spider-Man Miles Morales, The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2, the list goes on and on, like all of the Uncharted games. And while a lot of those games eventually did come to PC, while they were PlayStation exclusive games, none of these PC players really showed up to buy a PlayStation. So when you're faced with games like that are literally the top tier, highest bar of quality in the entire industry, and that's not even swaying people who built a PC for like $2,000, then I don't think it was ever going to happen. So releasing those games on PC is just a smart move from a revenue standpoint, because all of the money they make from Steam, that 70% of every purchase made, will just go right back into developing these games. Because as I was just talking about, porting games from PS5 to PC is a lot easier than porting PS5 games over to Xbox, because they use PCs to develop these games in the first place. Like when they're developing the games, they'll have builds that can run on a PlayStation 5, but as far as I know, while the game is being developed, the vast majority of that takes place on a PC anyway. So spending a little bit of money to have their internal studios like Nix's, for example, porting over these games and then selling just a few copies makes back that investment like tenfold extremely quickly. So yeah, hearing all this news about Xbox going multi-platform, all these rumors that boxes are going away, I've never been more confident that consoles will not go away than I am right now. Sony and Xbox both understand that having a console where people can just put it in their TV, grab the game, throw the disc in, or just download it straight to the device, that is always going to be their bread and butter when it comes to selling games. And even from a services standpoint, like Game Pass or PS Plus Extra, Sony and Microsoft have both realized that they need to find different ways to monetize these games. Xbox does it by selling a $30 upgrade to the Ultimate Edition, so you can play the game for free on Game Pass, but get the early access by paying $30. That, of course, gives them a big revenue stream when they launch games. PlayStation just launches the games for $70 and waits a year or two to drop them on their service. And I think both have figured out a way that's different that gives them both revenue, which keeps gaming going forward. So yeah, after weeks of rumors, people having meltdowns and thinking Xbox is going fully multi-platform, I think we got the best scenario overall, right? Like there's still going to be a small amount of competition over there on the Xbox side. There's going to be Nintendo doing what Nintendo does over on their corner, and PlayStation's going to get the best experience overall, because whatever Xbox games come to PlayStation opens up PlayStation's library even more. So if you were worried about anything changing, I don't think for at least the short term we really have anything to worry about. What I do think we have to worry about is PlayStation just waking up and announcing some damn games. I want to know what first party stuff is coming in 2025. I think they need to have a showcase sooner rather than later where they can announce that stuff. But yeah, now I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you satisfied with Xbox's response? Are you satisfied with what you heard from PlayStation, from Hiroki Totoki, the guy at the top, when he did that investor call? Let me know what you're thinking about everything down in the comments below. And of course, remember to subscribe to the channel and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.